So one of the things that we like to encourage, I use an iPhone. I honestly don't know why, because I'm not savvy enough to be able to tell you the difference of why an iPhone is better than an Android, or why Android would be better than, if I have an iPhone and you have a Samsung, as long as I could call you on that phone, I would say, well, it worked. So unfortunately, because I have an iPhone, I don't know if the bookmarking process is the same as what it is on an iPhone. But if you drive open your browser on your phone and you put nordinew.com into the address window up there, like on iPhones, as an example, I know it's the icon that kind of looks like a page, like a page entry, if you will. It's the square with an arrow that's coming off the top of it. When you go to nordinew.com and then you touch that icon, it'll ask, do you want to bookmark this? And it also gives you an opportunity to see what that mobile interface looks like in terms of that website. I personally feel like we can't ever talk about that, remind you about that enough, in terms of the resource that's available to you guys 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and it does not cost you a dime to use it. It does not cost you anything to get into that information and use that information at your disposal. We want that to be there for you guys, literally as a tool, as a service tool, so that you don't feel the frustration or feeling like your only option is making a phone call. I never would have guessed it in a million years. When I took the job and the description of the job was provided to me, I thought to myself, well, I've already been helping other younger guys on our crews. I've been doing that for a long time already. My Nextel would beep, I'd answer it, and sometimes it would be one of the younger guys that was like, hey, I got a quick question for you on a, wiring up the O terminal for a heat pump or something like that. And I always thought to myself, it didn't ever really seem that difficult to me. I quickly learned that it is not that easy at all to help somebody over the phone when it comes to dealing with a heating and air problem. And part of that is just there's so much different terminology, but heating and air conditioning still to this day it's a trade, it's a skill, it's an industry, whatever name you want to give it. There's a lot of habits and there's rules of thumb that have been handed out for years and years and years. And so I'll give you a great example. When I'm on the phone with a guy and he's telling me that the system isn't cooling well, very often he might say something to me like, I just don't understand because, my suction's good. Okay, what is good? What's that number? Good doesn't mean anything to me, because I have no idea what your impression of good is. To some guys, 110 pounds of suction on a 410A system, that's good. And the reason why they say that's good is because that's above 32 degrees Fahrenheit. I would say 110 pounds of suction on a 410A system puts you at a point of being borderline and having that thing go sideways on you, right? Airflow too. My airflow's good, I'm set on high. The only thing that you've told me is what speed the blower motor has been set to. I have actually no real idea of how much air you're actually delivering on that system. And that's where the frustration easily starts creeping in on phone conversations, and we realize that. So we don't want you guys to have to feel like that phone is your only resource. That's where the website comes in. I'm going to pass this 2J they're always kind of like 2 steps ahead of me when it comes to, hey, you know, if you want to be able to show these guys something. So I was able to get my hands on this yesterday from the guys in Dayton. But this is a nice sample right here, a cross-section, if you will, that allows you to actually kind of get a better idea of the inner workings of how these coils are constructed, if you will. So I'll just kind of start it around the room, if you will. By all means, you know, check it out. Don't smash your neighbor on the head with it, just to kind of see if it breaks over his head, though, obviously. But check it out at your own pace there, if you will. Was anybody not, if you did try to attempt to go to our website, was anybody not able to bring that site up? Good, good, good. Okay, so what I'm going to start to move into now is what we refer to as the QRD, or the quick reference data. One of the things about microchannel technology is that it gave us a platform to be able to expand system matchups in terms of condenser, evaporator, or split heat pump systems, you know, dual fuel applications, or whatever the case may be. It gave us a pretty broad platform to be able to put certain matchups together. Gave us a lot of flexibility. Gives you guys a lot of options. By the same token, though, it's kind of like having a good sharp knife, if you will. It's a very handy, very useful tool, but it's certainly one that you have to respect, if you will, right? And so the QRD, or the quick reference data, that is going to be literature that you're going to receive in every condenser, every high side that you would unbox, if you will. It's going to be in the plastic bag, the plastic envelope that contains the install instructions, the warranty paperwork, all that kind of good stuff. And because of that, it also makes it a prime target for being information that inadvertently gets chucked. Because there are a lot of guys who are like, I've been doing, you know, okay, unbox it, shipping block, don't need it, you know, ribbon, don't need it, okay, paperwork, you know, I'll get to that later, and it gets chucked.
It never happens.
I am pleading with you, learn to break that habit, particularly with our brands of equipment, because there is information in that plastic envelope that is for you. We put it there obviously so that it stays protected and doesn't get all beat up in the process, but there's information there that is important for you to have, and the QRD is an example of one of those types of documents. So because I'm not crazy about the way that it ends up showing up here in terms of our training presentation, what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to jump back onto the Wi-Fi. I'm going to go into the library and I'm going to go into a set of the install instructions and actually pull up one of the QRD package of literature, the same variety that you would see out in the field, and I'll go through that information and show you guys how that literature actually works in terms of the information, or the tool value, if you will. This right here is just a short example of what we try to do at Nordyne in terms of, if we have a topic that we feel is very, very important that we want to try to communicate to the field as easily and as often as possible, we'll do a video on it. I won't play this whole thing, But this is an example of a lunch and learn that we did not too long ago. Myself and Doug.
With the Technical Service Department, and with me today is Dana Clark. Today we're going to be discussing how to use a quick reference data sheet.
As we move into the future of the HVAC industry, Nortek has continued.
Yes, Dana learned how to read a teleprompter. So, because obviously I talk like that on a regular basis, right? Oh, and I stopped it at a really cool point too. My point being on these types of videos, these are available. If you guys at any time, if you ever want to review a video like that, you can find that kind of thing either on the Nordine U website or on the Nordine Interactive network. Those videos are available to you at all times if you want to review that information or show it to other guys on the crew, whatever the case may be. So I'll run through a few of these slides rather quickly, but then I'll actually jump over onto the Wi-Fi portion of it and actually bring it up from the library. But in the QRD, you're going to see some tech spec information, some basic tech stuff in terms of electrical, in terms of factory charge, some spec in terms of the compressor like RLA, LRA numbers, information on the fan motor, and what have you. So you'll just have some basic component data there, if you will. Minimum clearance, physical dimensions on the condenser, things like that. But so here I'm going to jump off. So yesterday the guys, by majority, all agreed that they primarily would see a lot of heat pump applications in their area. Would you guys agree with that? Or would you typically say it's going to be more like just a straight cool high side, like air conditioning application? Do you have a fair share of heat pumps? Okay. So I'll use a split heat pump as an example. Actually, let's do. You guys do Westinghouse out of here. We'll do Westinghouse. Not that's going to radically change the information at all. Another thing that I'll just point out about the library, obviously we have no intent on having you unbox a condenser only to discover that the QRD information isn't there. That's obviously an embarrassment. We don't want that to happen. But in the event that that should happen to you, I don't want you to go, well crap, now what? Now I've got to waste a bunch of time getting my hands on another copy of this, or I got to start making a phone call. You don't. If you've got a cell phone or a tablet, if you've got internet connectivity or a means of being able to pull something off the web on your person at all times, you can get to the information very, very quickly and keep right on trucking. Okay, so I'll pull up a QRD here. Now, the QRD, I'll also say, quick reference data information is something that evolves over time. I don't want you to ever, like, say, print off one single copy of this for like your most popular selling SEER or tonnage or whatever the case may be, and then tell yourself that you never want to refresh any of that information or look to see if it may have changed, because as time goes on and as we go further into higher SEER applications, more flexibility in terms of that platform that we can work off of, this information can and will change. But so right here we're looking at an example of that quick reference data. We're just using a Westinghouse branded E or F series 13 SEER single stage heat pump, 410A refrigerant. Right off the bat we're looking at just some basic spec information in terms of electrical data. Some additional stuff as far as fan motor, compressor, all that other kind of good stuff. But another thing that I want to point out right off the bat, and we get this question an awful lot, is the amount of charge that came in any one particular piece of equipment original from factory. So here we can see refrigerant charge, 410A in ounces for the outdoor unit and 15 feet of line set. All of our performance numbers, if you will, in terms of a lot of this data is going to generate off of a system that we would say is comprised of the condenser, the indoor coil, your dryer, and 15 feet of line set run. Okay? I am not the world's biggest fan of anything in a split system that's less than 15 feet. I'm not the world's biggest fan of that. You can get turbulence noise, you can get, it makes charging it a lot more fun because typically you're talking about having to remove refrigerant out of the system. And I don't know if you guys would disagree with this. I think having to get refrigerant back out is 2 or even 3 times harder than just putting it in. Having to get it back out is a much more difficult task and time consuming, if you will. But so in terms of total refrigerant charge, we're giving that to you in ounces. So, you know, like a 3-ton as an example, in this case, would have come from the factory with 158 ounces in it, as far as that refrigerant charge goes. Actually, I'm going to go to a different one here. Same thing, except this is an example of that evolution of the information. I want to point out something right here that we talk about in terms, because I was just talking about 15 feet line set application. We are asked an awful lot, okay, so if I go past 15 feet, what do I need to be ready to calculate for? And we point that out in terms of microchannel system matchups. If you are running a 3/8, 3/4 line set, we're going to ask you to account for 0.6 ounces per foot once you're past 15. If you have a 3/8, 7/8, we're going to ask you to account for 0.7 ounces. And if you're running 3/8 inch and 1/8, we're going to have you account for additional refrigerant at 0.8 ounces per additional foot. We'll come back to that. At the very first set of kind of like the spreadsheet format, if you will, on the information for the QRD, we start talking about when you see certain pieces of information in these cells, you may see, and it's going to be kind of hard to see the way that it ends up projected up here, but in this physical paperwork, you may see instances where the information in that cell might be in a bold-faced type. You may also see that that information is not only in a bold-faced type, but it's also a shaded cell or a shaded box, if you will. What we're trying to, you know, spell out here, but also show you visually in that cell, if your matchup ends up with a cell that might be in bold-faced type, we're trying to make that jump off the page for you and say, this matchup that you're looking to do right here, right now on this install is going to require a change of some variety. Most likely going to be like the metering device type or bore size on a piston, if you will. Okay? But just kind of starting off, the first thing that you're going to see at the top header on the condensers is just going to be your tonnage. So 1.5 tons, continuing on down from 3 ton all the way down on to 5 ton. You're going to see another title or column here, if you will, that will say ID restrictor supplied with OD unit. What we mean by that is what is the size, the bore size of the restrictor that we provided in the packaging of that heat pump that might be needed to be used as an alternate piston at the indoor coil. Right? If you have a matchup where you need to make a change to the bore size of that indoor piston, that piston is going, you want to look for that to be included in that parts bag. Again, that's why you don't take that paperwork and chuck it. That has happened. It's happened a shockingly high number of times where we end up with a guy on the phone going, I don't think this thing's working quite right. My pressures aren't where they should be, only to discover that what he needed to do was upsize the indoor piston. And he says, well, you know, where was I supposed to get the piston from? Well, it would have been in that plastic envelope with the paperwork. You still have that? Nope. That went into the cardboard box packaging, and that's already been hauled off the job. Uh-oh. Crap. Right? And so now he's sunk. You know? So right from the jump now, you know, he's having to backpedal on the thing. We don't want that. You don't want that. Obviously, we've got to secure it somehow in the unit. We chose to put it in there with that paperwork. So ID restrictor supplied with outdoor unit will be the possibility of an alternate bore size on a piston that you may need to use at the indoor coil. OD restrictor supplied with OD unit. What we mean by that is, what is the bore size of the piston that we installed in that heat pump at the factory? Alright, so on a 1.5 tons from factory, we've got a 35. On a 3 ton from factory, we've got a 55. Alright? It's important to know what that terminology is indicating to you. It's also important to realize what we're referencing there in terms of that piston, because it's going to correlate into the information that you see in the cell when you make your matchup. Obviously, I'll continue on with that. And then outdoor unit